It looks like it's noon, so it also looks like the attendee count is still going up. So we'll let people continue to roll in here as we do introductions and whatnot. But welcome. Thanks so much for joining our public service loan forgiveness webinar today. Today we'll just be sharing an overview of the program and some recent updates and things going on with the Department of Education and this program that you want to be aware of. My name is Allie Smith. I'm Assistant Director of Financial Counseling here at Penn State's Sokolov-Miller Family Financial and Life Skills Center. I'm also joined by my colleague, Sarah Alvarado Metzger today, so I'll let her introduce herself also.
Hi, Allie. Thanks. And hello, everyone. Like Allie said, my name is Sarah. I'm one of the two Sarahs in the office. If you've worked with us before, you know there's a duo, but I'm one of a great team. And I'm really excited to be here. Talking about public service loan forgiveness is so fun. It is so fun to get follow-up emails from folks who share their success stories around this program. So I can't wait to dive in. Thanks so much for joining.
Yeah, and so we also have one of our wonderful financial literacy ambassadors here to help us out with the webinar today also. Holly Deemer is moderating the chat, so she'll be posting some helpful links and additional resources in there throughout today's webinar. So you may just want to keep the chat open where you can see it so you don't miss any of those potential helpful tidbits of information coming through there. So just a few housekeeping items to share before we get started. First, as you have questions or if you have questions, you can ask them in the chat or in the Q&A. Holly and I, maybe Sarah too, will all be looking at the chat and then we'll check out the Q&A at the end. The Q&A feature does allow you to ask questions anonymously if you'd like to take advantage of that and ask an anonymous question. If you happen to be attending from SMEAL's Ethical Leadership Challenge, we are still partnering with them, but we don't have the QR codes at the end of the session anymore. We're just communicating directly with the person who leads that challenge to share the attendance report. So rest assured, if you're coming from SMEAL, you will receive credit for attending this session, and we'll just do that automatically. This webinar is also being recorded, and you can find recordings of all of our past webinars on our YouTube page, which is at Finlit PSU, and that's also linked in the chat here for you as well. Okay. So I did have a chance to check out the registration report beforehand. It looks like we have a lot of undergraduate students attending today and also a lot of staff members, which I'm not surprised to see because as Penn State staff members, you are eligible for public service loan forgiveness. So this is a great place for you to be to learn about this program. I also saw some good representation from our campuses, which is really exciting. So welcome everyone. We're really glad that you are joining today to learn all about PSLF. As we dive in here, I'll just share that, public service loan forgiveness is such an important topic, and we've really been trying to do some good work in the last few years in this PSLF space to really help folks in the Penn State community understand and take advantage of this program that you are eligible for. And just to be super clear, we'll talk all about this today, but if you are a Penn State employee and you work here full time, and you have federal student loans, of course, you are eligible for this program and you do qualify. So you're in the right place. So first, as we dive in here, a quick note on what we're really talking about today and what we're not so much talking about. We'll talk about basic requirements and temporary changes or considerations for the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. PSLF is one of several loan forgiveness programs offered on federal student loans, and note this is for federal student loans only. Listed on the screen here, you'll see some other federal loan forgiveness programs. So when we say loan forgiveness, that's not one specific program or one specific thing. There are actually many different types of loan forgiveness. There's Perkins loan forgiveness, teacher loan forgiveness, income-driven repayment forgiveness, and then various other programs for different fields that people might work in, especially the health industry. Public service loan forgiveness, however, is by far the most comprehensive of these programs because it offers total and complete forgiveness on federal student loans at the end of the repayment period, which is 10 years for this program. So, with the understanding that all of these other federal loan forgiveness programs exist, we're going to kind of zoom in on PSLF today and do a deep dive so you have a good understanding of what it is, how it works, if you're eligible, and what steps you need to take if you're interested in pursuing PSLF. For information on any of these other programs that you see on the screen, you can visit studentaid.gov to read more about those. So during our webinar today, the way we approach this is really going to be to talk through, and Sarah's going to talk through the normal basic rules for public service loan forgiveness. And then we'll talk about temporary changes and considerations and what you might need to do to navigate these changes, if anything. If you've kept up with the news in this program at all, there have been so many different changes in the last few years, really aimed at expanding eligibility and that kind of thing. So that's really what the second kind of portion of this, once we get through the basic rules, will be focused on. Before I hand it over to Sarah to dive into these basics, I'm really curious. I'm going to share out a poll. What is your experience with PSLF? So really just curious to know like where you're at with this program currently. I'll take a second to read through the options here. Since we do have so many staff, I am happy to see that the most popular one at this point is I'm currently pursuing PSLF and have submitted at least one form. That's great. Awesome. Lydia is here from Student Aid to learn more. Awesome. Thanks, Lydia, for coming.
Yes, Susan, you definitely are a financial aid guru. Verified.
Cool. Well, actually, it looks like we have 100% participation on this poll, so that's great. I'll go ahead and share out the results just so you, if you answered the poll, can see how other people are also tuning in and what their experience is. Awesome. Okay. Well, that said, I'll hand it off to Sarah to talk to us about these PSLF basics. These are the things that are always true about PSLF.
Perfect. Thanks, Allie. And because these things are always true, it's really important that if you are interested in PSLF, you are taking 10 years time to participate in this program to get your loans forgiven, it's really important that you understand these basics like the back of your hand. And fortunately, they're not overly complicated, right? I mean, I've got enough fingers on my hands, one for each area of eligibility that I can like make a little note to remember, right? And we've got it on the screen here. You could take a picture or screenshot of this slide. We're also going to post this webinar on YouTube when we're done with it later this week. So you'll have a reference point to come back to. But getting your loans forgiven as part of public service loan forgiveness is as easy as this visual right here. You must make 120 qualifying payments. So you see that first on the left-hand side. You have to make 120 qualifying monthly bill payments on your federal direct student loans. And while you're making those payments on those loans, you must be in a qualifying repayment plan and working full-time for a qualifying employer. All at the same time when you are applying for and receiving PSLF. So the main four areas of eligibility, those circles, they overlap. They have to happen concurrently. as does that little note at the top that when you apply for and receive public service loan forgiveness, you still need to be working for the qualifying employer, having done everything else on this page concurrently, right? So let me give you an example of how this doesn't work. Let's say you're on a qualifying repayment plan, which I'll talk to you about. I'll give you the breakdown. But let's say you're on a qualifying repayment plan while making monthly payments, but you aren't working for a qualifying employer. Maybe you're working somewhere in the private industry when you're making those payments. Those payments aren't going to count to or toward the 120 that you need to receive PSLF per these rules. So that said, they're not complicated rules to understand in the most basic form, but it is really important that you are monitoring that you meet each of these areas of eligibility at the same time. If you leave Penn State, so those of you who are our colleagues here, if you leave Penn State and go to private industry for a period of time, even though you're making payments, if your employer doesn't qualify, those payments aren't going to count. And so it's going to take you a little bit longer to get forgiveness. So I want to make that clear. Four main areas of eligibility here on the screen, they overlap and they need to happen concurrently. It is your responsibility to monitor your progress and that you are doing the things you need to. The Federal Department of Education is not monitoring, they're not reminding you, they're not checking in. It is on the borrower to keep tabs on all this. So I know we've got some links in the chat that lead to the studentaid.gov website. Make sure that you go there and you're cross-referencing their materials because all of this, it comes directly from the Ed department, right? I'm not making up anything new here. So let's dive into each of these four areas of eligibility. I'm gonna hopefully move us forward on the slide. I might need Allie's help though. Oh, it's thinking about it. There we go. All right, so let's first talk about these qualifying payments in more detail. You need to make 120, as I mentioned previously, and you need to make sure that that payment is for the full amount due as shown on your bill. If you pay less than that and don't meet that bill payment in total, that payment's not going to count. Now, you can make partial payments within a month that are going to add up to, let's say, $404 or whatever your bill payment is. That's fine. But you can't make a ton of extra payments in 1 month and assume that they're going to count towards the 120 that you need. You can make a lump sum payment and pay ahead on your loans up to 12 months. So if you're kind of this, let me set it and forget it, I just want to do a lump sum payment, get my 12 credits, and also get my payments made for the next year because I don't want to have to think about it, that's fine. You can get those 12 credits if you lump sum make a payment 12 months out. But again, you can't make like 15 different payments within the month of November and assume that you're going to get 15 credits. It doesn't work that way, right? It also doesn't work when you make payments that are, at a time when they're not required, right? So be mindful of that. Generally speaking, if you're just paying your bill in full every month, like you're good to go, that's a qualifying payment. Easy peasy lemon squeezy, right? So that's the first area of eligibility. Did we miss? I think it might have skipped ahead a slide. Can you go back one, Allie? There we go. I knew it did. Okay. We almost know this whole slide deck like the back of our hands. Okay. So 120 payments, and those payments must be made on eligible qualifying loans. There are different types of federal student loans that exist. It is your job to log into studentaid.gov to look at your loans and confirm that you have loans that are eligible for this PSLF program. If they're not eligible, potentially you might not be able to get forgiveness, but that kind of gets into the weeds. We'll talk a little bit more about that towards the end of this slide deck, but let's stick with the basics, right? So you'll see a list of eligible and ineligible loans on my screen. FFEL, I'm going right to the bottom here. FFEL loans and Perkins loans are ineligible for PSLF. So if you log into studentaid.gov and you see that you have these loans, they are not going to qualify for PSLF. And that is actually part of the reason why early on when this PSLF program started and in 2017, once people had accrued 10 years towards forgiveness, and we saw this big issue of people not getting their loans forgiven. Primarily it was because there was an issue with the type of loans that they have. So the history is FFEL loans and Perkins loans, they predated the PSLF program. Program started in 2007. The first forgiveness letters began issuing in 2017, 10 years later. But FFEL and Perkins loans, they never had loan forgiveness attached to them because they predated the PSLF program, right? Now, if you are an undergraduate student tuning in, you're listening to me say FFEL and Perkins, and you're like, what the heck is that? Well, FFEL FFEL loans, they were no longer issued after 2010, and Perkins loans were no longer issued after 2018. So chances are you don't have those loans anyways. But the weird thing is that some of these loans were still issued when public service loan forgiveness was an existing program. And so that made things confusing. Borrowers were confused. People weren't getting forgiveness. And hence what Allie mentioned, there were a lot of temporary rules that were put in place over the last couple of years in an effort to get people loan forgiveness who should have qualified, or things were kind of wonky because of their loan type, and it just was a little messy, right? So if you log into studentaid.gov, you see you have FFEL or Perkins loans, that's a great time to meet with one of our team members, Allie or Sarah, those who coach on PSLF, because there's some nuance to having those loans. Typically, they're not eligible, but um, there's a little bit more to unpack there potentially. The eligible loan, right? Those of you who are in undergrad now, or anyone who really was in school since the 90s, probably have some or all direct loans. We call it the direct loan program from the federal government. These unsubsidized, subsidized, grad plus, consolidated, and parent plus loans all qualify for PSLF. So if you see that you have a direct loan in studentaid.gov, when you're looking at your dashboard, you have a loan that is eligible. We put a little asterisk by Parent Plus loans because they are eligible, but there's a few extra steps you kind of have to take to make sure that you get forgiveness on those loans. And Allie will talk a little bit more about that at the end. So if we have parents tuning in, which it sounds like we do, just hold the line. We'll tell you more about what to know as it relates to Parent Plus loans. Okay. But these are the loans that qualify, that do and do not, right? So now that we have that in mind, we know we need to be making 120 payments on these loans. Let's move it forward into the repayment plans, which I'll ask Allie to kindly move me forward since Zoom and PowerPoint don't want to cooperate with me. All right. Then we get into the qualifying repayment plans. There's a whole host of plans that you all can opt into once you graduate and you begin repayment on your loans, which is one of the benefits to taking out a federal loan. Of course, we've got these different repayment plans that are more flexible to our budgets when we are experiencing financial hardship, for example. So we've got that benefit, but not all of the Fed's repayment plans qualify. It just doesn't. There are some that do, and I've got them listed here on this screen, but there's some really important things to understand about the plans that do qualify. First, for example, the 10-year standard plan is a qualifying repayment plan. So if your loans, if you're in this standard plan and you're making payments and you're working for Penn State, for example, you're full-time, meeting all the criteria, like your loans are going to qualify for PSLF. But the hangup is 10 years is the same amount of time that you need to spend making payments in order to get forgiveness. So when you go to make your last payment and to pay off your student loan in the 10-year plan, that would be the same time in which you'd get forgiveness, but there's nothing left on your balance. So if you're in the 10-year standard plan, that's okay, right? Your payments are still going to count, but it's not going to help you maximize the total amount forgiven. So what you're going to want to do is opt into, so you call up your loan servicer or get on studentaid.gov, you put yourself into one of the income-driven repayment plans that do qualify, which in many cases is going to lower your monthly bill payment, and that's going to allow you to have more forgiven at the end of your 10 years, 120 payments. So the plans that do qualify for PSLF are listed here. There's pay as you earn, income-based repayment, income contingent repayment, as well as the SAVE plan, Save on a Valuable Education. But that plan is currently being litigated. We've got some stays on that, and so it those who are in the SAVE plan are kind of in a weird spot right now. It's not a plan that you can easily opt into. Allie will talk more about it at the end once we get towards, we're done with the basics. But generally, these are the plans that qualify. So go and strategize. If you haven't yet graduated from Penn State, this is your chance to really be thoughtful about, okay, I have to choose my repayment plan. Which plan am I going to opt into if I'm pursuing public service loan forgiveness that will allow me to get the most amount forgiven at the end of 10 years or 120 payments? Or if you're somebody who's already been out of college a little while, those of you who work at Penn State and you've kind of bopped around between a few different repayment plans, just know that if you were in the standard plan for any period of time, those payments can still count, which is really reassuring. All right, onward. So let's talk about then the last big area of eligibility. Now that we have the number of payments, the type of loans, the type of repayment plans out of the way. The last big piece that you need to be mindful of is that public service loan forgiveness is meant for public servants, people who work for the government, any level. We're talking tribal, local, state, federal government, people who work for nonprofits, those of us who are here working at Penn State in higher ed, or people who work for hospital systems, for example, that are nonprofit hospital systems. Teachers could take advantage of public service loan forgiveness, though there's a little asterisk there as well, because there's also loan forgiveness specifically for teachers. So some more to understand. But basically, this is a program that's meant to motivate folks like myself and Allie to come and work in the public sector to serve others, and then get this added benefit of having loans forgiven after we spend 10 years in this space working and serving others, right? So it makes sense. The benefit is the exchange, right? The government gets more public servants, and we get our loans forgiven. So it's a nice shaking of hands. There are going to be some opportunities for folks who work in organizations that are not necessarily a 501c3, but some other type of nonprofit like tax code status that provides specific services as part of the organization. So it's worth investigating. And it's actually really easy to figure out whether or not your employer qualifies, because as Allie will take us to the next slide, the Department of Ed provides us with a nifty resource called the PSLF Help Tool. So this help tool will allow you to search up your employer and figure out whether or not they qualify. In addition to knowing that your employer qualifies, you need to make sure that your work time spent with that employer is also eligible. And so like Allie had mentioned right at the beginning of this presentation, you have to work full-time for the employer. Now, full-time is whatever the employer deems it to be. I think at Penn State it's 40 hours. I don't actually know, but I work at least 40 hours a week and I'm full-time. But some employers might consider 38. Oh, Tracy in the chat says it's 30. I appreciate that. Okay, good to know. Coincidentally, the government also sees 30 hours as full-time employment. So at minimum, if you're working for an employer who qualifies, you need to be working there at least 30 hours a week. And that's what the Department of Ed considers its minimum threshold. What's kind of neat in this space is that you could actually split that 30 hours among a couple of different employers. For example, if you're working part-time at Penn State and part-time for a nonprofit, 15 hours and 15 hours, you can add that together, assuming that you're working at the same time, right? Maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then Monday, Fridays at two separate places. You can kind of piecemeal those hours together to get your total of 30. So that's really helpful and really important to be mindful of if you're an active job seeker and you're trying to figure out how to structure your workday while still trying to pursue public service loan forgiveness. You need to work at least 30 hours. Okay. It's also important to remember that your employer must be the one who's paying you. So if you are working at Penn State, but you're actually contracted by Penn State, you work external from the university and you come in as a contractor, if Penn State's not, on your W-2, if they're not paying your paycheck, it's not going to qualify. You need to make sure that your employer is the one who is actually paying you and is on your W-2 form as you see it each tax season. Okay. But anywho, all of that to say, there's a lot of employers out there, a lot of places that you can work to make sure that you're, eligible for PSLF. Make sure that you determine, you get this sorted nice and early so that you don't spend 9 years at an employer thinking that they qualify and then suddenly fill out this PSLF help tool and realize, oh my gosh, they don't actually qualify. Because that's a lot of time spent that you can't necessarily recuperate instantaneously, in terms of payments towards PSLF. So let's keep it no nonsense. You go to studentaid.gov/PSLF and it's going to ask you to input some information, do a little bit of searching for your employers to figure out if they qualify. And then best part is it will also then generate the form that you need to submit so that your employer can verify your employment and get that information back over to the Department of Ed. Once you have your employer verify that you have been employed full-time, right, for however long, months, years it's been, PSLF, the program on studentaid.gov is going to populate and I think we've got this on the next screen, it's going to populate a count, right? Everything's happening, this count, your ability to confirm your progress towards PSLF happens once you fill out that PSLF help tool. Your employer fills out the verification form, sends it back, and then boom, here's what you see here. You'll see all of your different loans listed and the number of payments that you've made that qualify towards the 120 payments you need to get your loans forgiven. Assuming everything else is you followed it to the T, you've got the right loans, you've got the repayment plan in place, you're working for the employer, and you're making those payments on time every month, right? I don't think that I missed anything, but gosh, Allie, let me know if I did.
You did a great job.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. If you had questions, hopefully that helped to answer a bunch of them from the jump. But I know that we've got some more nuanced questions out there, like around parent loans and whatnot. So I'm going to turn it back over to Allie, who's going to talk more specifically about these asterisk items that we had earlier in the slide deck.
Okay, so let me just stress again that those normal basic rules that Sarah shared are the things that are always true about PSLF. So I'm going to share some like things to be aware of, things that are kind of unfolding right now, but the most important thing is that you're really familiar with those basic requirements. And if you can follow those and you meet those basic requirements, you will see successful loan forgiveness through PSLF. So those are the most important things. And they're really the backbone of the program, right? So here are some additional special considerations, things that are happening right now. The first thing to be aware of is that the Department of Education is officially managing the PSLF program. So They are the ones who will take your PSLF forms, count your payments, track your progress, and provide support for the program if you need it. This is new as of July of this year. So in times past, there have been specific loan servicers that if you indicated that you want to pursue PSLF for your loans, those loans would be transferred to those specific loan servicers and they would become your new loan servicer who would help you manage this PSLF process. Most recently, this was the loan servicer Mohila. And in the past, it was My Fed Loans. I'm not sure beyond that who the servicers were, but just know that this is no longer the case. Now it's Student Aid or the Department of Education themselves. So now and moving forward, if you indicate that you are wanting to pursue PSLF for your loans for the first time, your loans will not change servicers. You'll stay with your current loan servicer, whoever that is, and Student Aid will manage your PSLF. So this is good. I think this helps to simplify things just a little bit. If you have already filled out forms and you are actively pursuing the program, you can view your progress towards PSLF in your studentaid.gov account. So you'll see those like green bars that we just had up on the last slide. Once you've got forms processed and you've got some active payment counts there. So you can find that by going to your studentaid.gov account, and then you'll need to click, it's like in your My Aid box, View Details. Once you click that, you'll be able to see that progress there. So that's really the first big change that the Department of Education is managing PSLF. The next thing that we need to talk about is the SAVE plan. So Sarah mentioned this earlier, and you may have heard some things about this if you keep up with the news, or, maybe you are in the SAVE plan and you receive some communications from Student Aid. But basically, the gist of this is that a federal court has blocked the SAVE repayment plan. And because of this, everyone who was enrolled in the SAVE plan has been placed into an administrative forbearance. During this time, there are no payments required and interest is not accruing on loans enrolled into SAVE. So to be super clear, no payments required. If you're in SAVE, you're in a forbearance currently, payments are not required on your loans and no interest is accruing on your loans. There is currently no timeline for how long this forbearance might last. We're just not sure. It's really until it's ironed out by the Department of Education and these courts. This is important as we talk about PSLF because we know that SAVE is a qualifying payment plan for PSLF. However, in this period of time in which we are in a forbearance and no payments are required and no interest is accruing, this period of time is not going to count towards PSLF progress. And you are also not able to request to be taken out of the forbearance and resume those payments under SAVE. Like if you're in SAVE, you are in this forbearance, it is what it is. So basically, if you're currently enrolled into SAVE and you don't take any further action, this will and has been stalling your progress for PSLF. And this happened in July. So a few months we've lost so far. And like I said earlier, we're not quite sure how long until this is ironed out. Susan shared, which I did read this, the hearing for SAVE is scheduled for Thursday. So hopefully we have some news on this soon. We will put a link in the chat. It looks like there are some good things happening in the chat. But Holly's timestamp is 12:29 p.m. She shared some good links. The save link is important. You want to check back on that. Student Aid encourages folks to check back on that page and that link for more information on the SAVE plan and what's going to happen as more developments occur. So that's really our second update, all about SAVE. The third and kind of final update or thing to note is regarding consolidations and different types of loans. So first, let's talk about Parent Plus loans here. Parent Plus loans, we know they are already direct loans, so they are eligible for PSLF. However, Parent Plus loans themselves only come with three repayment options, and those are the standard plan, the graduated plan, and the extended plan. Out of those, only the standard plan, and to be clear, it's the 10-year standard plan, is eligible for PSLF. The standard plan can get a little bit tricky because if your loans are over a certain balance, you no longer have access to the 10-year standard plan. It becomes the 30-year standard plan, and the 30-year standard plan is not an eligible payment plan for PSLF. So Parent Plus loans are tricky. Even if you are paying on the standard plan with a Parent Plus loan, you want to be sure it's that 10-year standard plan and not the 30-year standard plan. But remember what we said earlier about the 10-year standard plan. While it is technically a qualifying payment plan, you don't want to make all your payments on the 10-year plan because you'll have nothing left to forgive through PSLF at the end of those 10 years of payments. The trick with Parent Plus loans, or the thing to be aware of if you have them, is that they can be consolidated. And a Parent Plus loan consolidation is then eligible for one income-driven repayment plan, and that is the income contingent plan, or ICR, income contingent repayment. This is a qualifying plan for PSLF. There are some new consolidation rules to be aware of that came about in September of this year, so this is still very new. Typically in times past and with normal basic PSLF rules, consolidating a loan creates a brand new loan with no payment history attached to it. So before, if you maybe had, let's say, 8 years of payment history that is potentially qualifying for PSLF on a loan and you consolidate it, your new consolidation loan will have no payment history. There has been a temporary waiver that has allowed payment history to stick with consolidation loans going on for a few years now, but that finally expired on June 30th. So moving forward, if you consolidate your loans, the qualifying payments made on the direct loans, and note that this is just for direct loans, included in your consolidation loan will be credited to your consolidation loan using a weighted average of those payments. Borrowers are strongly encouraged to certify all of their qualifying employment applicable to the loans before they're consolidated to make sure that their weighted average is correctly applied. So I actually took that straight from studentaid.gov, but what that means is that if you have a Parent Plus loan that you're needing to consolidate to be eligible for the ICR income-driven plan, what you want to do first is make sure that your employment is certified and your payments are counted. And then you want to go ahead and consolidate those loans to get that weighted average credited moving forward. Hopefully that makes sense. I also want to stress that, like I said, that was straight from studentaid.gov. So this new weighted average consolidation rule is specific to Parent Plus loans and other types of loans that are already direct loans. And I'll bring that back up in a second when I talk about those other types of loans. The one other thing I want to just talk about with Parent Plus loans here is that we want to exercise caution when consolidating Parent Plus loans with other types of loans, like maybe your own loans that you have from undergrad or grad school, and you're also a parent with Parent Plus loans. And this is because the minimum payment for the ICR plan, the income contingent repayment plan, is typically quite high compared to other income-driven repayment plans. So if you consolidate your loans with Parent Plus loans, the consolidation loan altogether is treated as a consolidated Parent Plus loan, which means you'll only have access to that one income-driven repayment plan option, which is the ICR. Excuse me, which tends to have a high payment. Okay. Let's talk about other types of non-direct loans now. So for example, those Perkins loans or FFEL loans, those are not direct loans, so they are not eligible as they stand for PSLF. And this new consolidation rule seems that it won't allow you to keep your weighted average of payments when you consolidate non-direct loans because they're not already direct loans. So what you'd need to do to make your loans eligible for PSLF with Perkins loans or FFEL loans is to consolidate them to turn them into a direct consolidation loan. But you really need to be aware that, based on these current consolidation guidelines, you'll lose payment history in this consolidation process and you'll be starting over at zero payments with your consolidation loan. So, I mean, just know if you are planning to pursue PSLF and everything else lines up, your employment and everything like that, you need to have direct loans or it's not going to work. If you don't have direct loans, you can turn your loans into direct loans through a direct loan consolidation. But especially if you have non-direct loans, you need to exercise caution and be aware of what will happen with your payment history when you do. We really encourage, and you can always call your loan servicer with questions about payment history and consolidation also. This is just so new that it's kind of tough for us to keep up with it too, because there's just like one very specific link, which we shared it in the chat if you want to take a look at it. There's one very specific link that shares about the after September, we're taking a weighted average consolidation. So they don't even have all of their ducks in a row on the student aid website either. So we won't be able to answer those questions about, if I consolidate my FFEL loan, what will happen with my payment history? That's a good question for your loan servicer. I wish we had the answer. So we do encourage you to contact them if you're even, the least bit uncertain about what will happen if I consolidate. Okay, so that was a lot. Let's talk some next steps here. So if you are wanting to pursue PSLF for the first time, or you're just wanting to be really sure that you're on track and doing the right thing, where do you go from here? It actually is pretty simple. First, you want to use the PSLF help tool to guide you through the process and help you fill out your form. This is the method that is encouraged to use by studentaid.gov. There is a physical form that you can use, and we'll look at that on the next slide. But they really do encourage use the help tool. We also encourage use the help tool. It makes it really easy and simple. The PSLF help tool is really going to guide you through the process and help you fill in your form. For Penn State employees, you'll need Penn State's EIN number, which you can find on like a pay stub in Workday. And they'll also ask for an email address to send the form to. And for Penn State, that's just askhr@psu.edu. For any non-Penn Staters who are tuning in, you'll just need your EIN number for your employer and also the email address of an authorized official at your place of work who can certify your employment. So someone in HR is a great person to plug in there. And so this tool will send your form to your employer. They're going to verify your employment. Once student aid gets that form back from your employer, and to be clear, this is all going to happen on the back end. They make it really easy. So form will go to your employer. They'll certify your employment. Once student aid gets that form back, they'll go ahead and look at your verified employment and look for qualifying payments on your loans during that time period that was verified via the form. Those qualifying payments will then be counted towards your 120 for PSLF. You also want to be sure that you're meeting the PSLF basic requirements. So really those four things. You've got qualifying payments. So you're paying the full amount due as shown on your bill before the due date or by the due date. You've got qualifying loans, which are direct loans. You are in a qualifying repayment plan. So, you've got those few specific repayment plans that are qualifying. You're on one of those. And the fourth thing is that you are in qualifying employment, so you're working full-time for a public service employer. You can fill out your form at any time. So, for example, you could make 10 years of payments while working for a qualifying employer and then fill out your form once to have all those payments counted. But it's really suggested to fill out your form and certify your employment annually. This will give you an updated payment count each year and help you ensure that you're on track with the program like you thought you were. Personally, to keep it really simple and make sure that I don't forget, I have an annual recurring event on my own calendar reminding me to recertify my employment for PSLF each year. And so when that time rolls around, I just go in, use the help tool, send it off to Penn State, they send it back, and then eventually my payment count is updated for that year. So really simple. And then, you'll kind of rinse and repeat those first three steps that we see on the screen here, all while monitoring your progress at studentaid.gov. And it's really fun to check back once you've submitted your form and it's been processed. It's really fun to check back and see those green bars getting closer to 120. Okay. So I know I did a lot of talking about those changes and updates, and that might have felt a little confusing. At times, like I said, it's confusing for us trying to keep up with all of these things. But I do want to stress that if you follow these basic steps and you're kind of just rinsing and repeating these 4 steps that we have on the screen here, and you're meeting these basic requirements, you will be successful in your public service loan forgiveness efforts. Like I said, the PSLF help tool is really the recommended way to fill out your form. It's going to walk you through the form completely and send it back and forth between your employer and student aid and make it really easy on you. But just to give some context on what this form looks like, or if you do end up needing to fill it out manually for some reason, these are some things to check for. We will link the form in the chat in case you need to access it. But first, you want to make sure it's not expired. You want to fill out the first section, which is borrower information. You also want to plug in your employment status. You also want to plug in your employment status. So full-time and then your average hours per week. You really want to have in there to be eligible for PSLF, at least full-time, right? So it's either 30 hours or whatever your employer considers to be full-time, whichever is higher is what you want to see in there. And then if you do have to send it manually, you'll want to send it to student aid to this address here. Okay, so going back here, Abigail and Olivia have good questions about Penn State and the processing of this form. So in the past, Penn State has really encouraged us to use the manual version of this form, what we're looking at here, and upload it to Workday. Now, what's working best is to use the PSLF help tool, and the email that you plug in is askhr@psu.edu, and then you don't have to use Workday or anything like that. It will just, you use the tool, it'll go to Penn State, they'll certify your employment through that email, askhr@psu.edu, and then it will shoot back over to student aid. Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, and if for whatever reason, if you do have to fill out the manual form, depending on what sort of, if it's Penn State or what sort of process HR has for your work, you likely won't want to fill in your social security number and send it through email because that's not secure. What we were encouraging folks to do when the manual form and using Workday was the preferred way by Penn State is fill out everything except for SSN. Upload your form in Workday, get it back, fill in your social, and then send it off to student aid. But you don't have to do that anymore.
Can I add, Allie, really quick? If any of you do decide to snail mail your paperwork to the Department of Ed, please make sure you mail it certified and get a tracking number so that you're able to confirm it arrived.
Great point.
Mhm.
Yes. Okay. So hopefully this is making sense. Really use the help tool if you can. Okay. So as we wrap up here and move on into questions, we know that you have them. We just want to quickly plug our services and ways that we can support you and also support students in achieving their financial goals. All of our services are free and open to all Penn State students. So our one-on-one financial coaching appointments can be scheduled by students through Starfish. We also offer group presentations and webinars for classes, student organizations, and other groups. We've got self-study modules in Canvas on a variety of different topics, and these are open to the public, so you don't have to be Penn State affiliated to access those. And our newest, whoops, I should have changed that, Scratch Alumni Mentoring Program. Our newest offering that is replacing this bubble here is our financial wellness bookshelf. So we've got a bookshelf in our office here at the Grange Building at University Park, and each campus has its own financial wellness bookshelf also. So at our bookshelves, we've got a variety of different financial wellness books, and if you want to go and check it out and take a book, it is free. You're able to read that book and then keep it, give it to a friend who might benefit from it, or even take it back to the bookshelf to let someone else have it. So, this is just another way for us to kind of increase financial literacy and connect folks with resources in the Penn State community. So, you can find all of our services on our website, which is financialliteracy.psu.edu. And we also do meet with Penn State faculty and staff for public service loan forgiveness coaching specifically. We do have limited availability, and we really likely need to prioritize employees whose loan situations don't seem to fit the guidelines. So if you've got loans that aren't direct loans, or if you have Parent Plus loans and have specific questions there, you can reach out to us. So to make an appointment or ask a question, you can email us at finlit@psu.edu. And for some of those more simple questions, we can probably just answer them via email. Um, but if your situation warrants an appointment, we can help you get set up with an appointment as well.